not crystal clear.
that you can't use it or you can use it. Either
Well,
way.
that's a very good question. I appreciate you raising it. The point of this particular application is to make it clear, crystal
I
clear.
understand. But my point is, this piece of property, well, let's do the other landscapers. They're out on main roads with exposure.
They're in another zone. That's
Now they
now a
are.
PI zone.
Now they are. This piece of property is located behind a bus terminal on one side. It's behind a storage yard for cars.
Right.
It's hidden in the back. I don't understand why this particular property is causing all this commotion. That's all I want to know.
Well, because somebody made an application, not necessarily with regard to the particular property, but the issue of whether a landscaper can function in an LO zone. Now, you raised some issues about other uses. Those uses, to some respect, in total respect, predated the village. So when we passed the zoning law, we had to continue to permit those uses to continue. They are legal, non-conforming uses. It is the village would love to eliminate all non-conforming uses, not to enlarge them. So if this is a non-conforming use,
So none of these other landscapers have variances to operate a landscaping business.
well, the ones that are in a PI zone, PI permitting industry in them, no one's ever raised the issue of whether or not, to us, they can function in either an LO zone or a PI zone.
It just seems that this piece of property is not even on a main road.
I hear you.
If you're gonna use it, it's surrounded by garbage to begin with.
Well, we're trying to clean up that garbage.
This is plain.
But if,
All right,
if,
that's not-
if they ever go out of business, those companies, the property will be returned to an LO zone. They will lose the
An
ability
LO zone.
to use that use. And therefore, the zoning that was planned for the village would go into effect. Right now, we have to permit non-conforming uses. Any use that predated, or a number of uses that predated the village that are non-conforming. And the village would like to eliminate those.
Right, so the landscapers over here now were before the village was formed?
I don't, not, which one you're talking about, I
I
don't know.
don't know. I
Village
don't know all
was-
the facts, I'm just
the
asking.
village was
I
formed
just
in
don't
nine-
understand this commotion over this.
Well, it's not something we cause.
Only one.
All right?
So how does it get settled?
Can
How
I
does this get
answer?
resolved?
Can I answer?
Yeah, sure.
All right. Only one landscaping business was approved in the yellow zone.
Okay.
And the site plan for that use will show everybody what was proposed. Mr. Levine is saying a full landscaping use was approved. I disagree. I suggest anybody who wants to look at that first site plan that says office building and related parking, it's in the file. Anybody can look at it and determine what was approved at that time. That was the only one. After that, all the landscaping uses, and that one was never built. That first approval was never built because that same person came back afterwards when it was a PI zone and got his revised site plan and built in the PI zone. So that all other landscapers, other than that first approval, were approved in the PI zone, and I've brought the documentation this evening.
No, but I understand your point, and it's well taken, but we're trying to, look, if we weren't asked to interpret this, we may not even be considering a use issue, but we weren't asked to interpret what the LO zone means. Now, in this case, hold on a minute.
No.
All right, you should keep in mind, this is not the only LO zone, there are a number of others in the village. So, whatever you interpret an LO zone to mean here is going to apply to every LO zone in the village. So, we have to consider what was meant by an LO zone, that's all we care about. Now, if someone's using it illegally after we interpret it, then that's the problem of the person using it. But this is a pure question. It doesn't really matter where it is, or what it's blocked, or no one can see it. That's not before us. What's before us is simply whether an LO zone permits a landscape, a full landscape, what I call a full landscape. Storage of equipment, storage of debris, storage of all kinds of stuff that landscaping uses, trucks in and out, et cetera, et cetera. Now, in the infinite wisdom of the village, they did change the law, and they now permit landscaping uses, specifically in PI zone, which was permitted anyway before, apparently, but it's certainly in the LO zone, but under conditions that are set forth in the law.
How long has this whole thing with this particular piece of property been going on for?
Well, there were two separate applications, so and they ran into one another. No, not for a while.
It's not getting resolved, is it?
It is.
I hope so. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you coming by from Muncie. You want to wait for
Sure.
Ms. Ullman, since Mr. Levine has already yielded time, he'll wait for you to
Yeah, we
finish.
might as well get this.
Go ahead.
I would just like to submit for the record, minutes of planning board meetings. And I would point out that the only CDRC, as you stated before, Mr. Chairman, is an advisory board to the planning board. I'm sorry.
Fire is killing me. There's no slack. Not enough slack. It's right behind me. Okay.
It's fine, it's fine.
You want
Site
to go to
plans,
Now
site,
that's not good.
site plans are approved by the planning board, and that, the knowledge of the planning board, the zone that the planning board believes it to be in, believes the application to be in, are what is important here. And I would, with respect to Mr. Landscape, I would put into the record the 2 pages of the planning board minutes of April 4th, 2002, where the heading of the public hearing notice for preliminary revised site plan indicates that the property is in an LO zone.
I just want to state for the record, Ms. Ullman, that when you put these in, I'm going to ask you to at least put in either the whole minute or certainly the first page.
I do, I have the page, the first, that's why there are 2 pages, because the first page refers to the name of the applicant. At the bottom, it says Village of Chestnut Ridge, minutes and decisions, April 4, 2002. The second page, Chairman Rubin, continuing with comments, and one of his comments is Note 3, change zone to PI. This is April 4, 2002, after the law was changed and received by the Secretary of State. The law was changed to PI from LO. June 6, 2002, again, continuation of public hearing on the preliminary revised site plan, and I will state that Mr. Stein, Mr. Landscape, had an engineer that never did what the planning board asked him to do. And so this revised application still says LO, even though in April they were asked to change it to PI. And again, This time, I think Mr. Levine says, on the vicinity map, are you sure you are showing the correct zoning? Check it. All it's not consistent, all PI, check all 3 sheets. Again, the engineer was told to please change the site plan to reflect the PI district and not the LO district. And this was consistent throughout. With respect to biosphere.
We're gonna submit that as an exhibit. Do we have
Yes.
numbers for Ms. Ullman's exhibits?
I don't know what the last number was.
6 was your last.
So we'll make
So
that
make this
7.
7.
And that is a complete minute or the first page and the relevant page?
This is the first page and the relevant page.
Okay, that's okay, that's all right. I was asking Mr. Levine for it, so I'm sure. As far as we have the context, as long as we know the context of the document. Page.
With respect to biosphere, preliminary site plan dated planning board July 7, 2005. In the heading, it is listed as zone PI. There was no approval of biosphere prior to this time.
What was the date on that, please? I'm sorry.
This is July 7, 2005.
2005, right.
Yes. And again, Mr. Levine, on the second page, states, Mr. Levine added that when revising the plan, the applicant should note that the property is in a PI zone. The land was rezoned about 3 years ago. The whole purpose of this, Mr. Chairman, is just to show that when approvals were given by the planning board, they knew that this was a PI zone. At no time, either during, other than the very first approval of Mr. Landscape, all of the other approvals of Mr. Landscape and Biosphere were approved in the PI zone, and the planning board knew it was in the PI zone. August 4, 2005, again, public hearing adjourned from July 7, 2005. Preliminary site plan. The zone is listed as PI. August 30, 2005, Biosphere. Preliminary site plan. Public hearing. Zone, PI. April 6, 2006, Biosphere, preliminary site plan, public hearing, PI. November 6, 2008, Biosphere, this time was informal discussion, and it was still listed as PI.
What was listed as PI?
The informal discussion of
You mean
biosphere.
minutes?
In the minutes. These are all minutes, Mr. Chairman. These were taken right out of the planning board.
I'd explain that a
minutes.
number of minutes show LO. Not that I think it's relevant at this point, because I think it's clear that people knew, and should have known,
They knew,
that it was PI,
Because-
and that if it says LO, it must have been some kind of an error, typographical error.
yes, because the
You'll get
clerk,
your chance.
because generally, as with CDRC minutes, the clerk takes the heading that's given by the applicant. And in all fairness, I'm sure I didn't look at the headings of every single CDRC submission, nor even at every planning board submission. and I don't think Mr. Levine did, and I don't think any member of the planning board did. When we did, we made the notation for them to change it. But as I said, if you look at the site plans, every time they were revised by Mr. Amati, who was Mr. Landscape's engineer, he kept the same LO zone, even though he was told in the minutes to change it. So, yeah, I mean, we perhaps made the mistake that we didn't tell him to change it often enough. But I don't think there is any question in anybody's mind, and certainly not in the planning board's mind, that when they approved these applications, they were approving them in the PI zone.
To the extent that you have more of the same demonstrating that, why don't we just submit it in mass, it becomes part of the record?
It's here, Mr. Chairman.
All right?
Exhibit 8.
Exhibit 8. Thank you, Ms. Solomon.
Yeah, no, I'm not putting in a dozen exhibits.
No,
just
it's all right. I don't mind if you do.
I just wanted a few
To the extent that it shows the same thing, we don't
Right.
have to go through every one.
Exactly, and I took out those, again, some of the headings, even in the planning board minutes, continued to show LO. But I think it is clear from all of this that every member of the planning board knew they were approving PI. They're approving the applications,
In a PI.
Biosphere and Mr. Landscape, other than that first approval in 2000. All the others, when it was in the PI zone.
Thank you. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay. Now, Mr. Levine, we'll hold you for, well, maybe we'll, Mr. Levine.
I'd like it last, if it's.
All right.
Oh, I'd like it to last.
No, I'm the applicant.
Right.
Oh, I didn't hear you giving all this testimony.
Why don't the-
Mr.
both
Levine,
of you-
thank you.
Excuse me?
Just get up, please, and finish. And then Mr. Lippert will finish.
I agree with the testimony that Doris just gave with Mr. Landscape and Biosphere. I find it curious that you started Biosphere in 2005. I stopped it in 2005 because that's when everything was stated PI.
No.
Before 2005, I didn't interrupt you, Doris. Before 2005, everything was stated LO. I've gone through the explanation over and over, and it's meaningless. Interrupt me, Mr. Chairman. Tell me it's meaningless. Tell Doris it's meaningless because the zone was changed in 2002.
Wait a minute, Mr. Levine, you took 4 hours, introduced 3 3/4 hours, introducing documents showing LO zone, and quite frankly, you knew that that was a PI zone, and you knew that the planning board knew it was a PI zone
No.
during most of the time.
No,
So all we're hearing
I beg your
is
pardon.
that these minutes really demonstrate that, and you've admitted it, that you knew that the zone was changed, and all we're talking about is apparently some typographical error
No.
in a minute.
No. I'm sorry.
Wait, I want to hear from Ms. Sullivan.
Yeah, I just want to clarify, I'm getting a little bit annoyed because of innuendo that I am hiding things and making misstatements. I went back, just so you'll know, Mr. Levine.
Yes.
I went back I went through all the minutes of 2002, 2003, 2004, 2005, and Biosphere started with the site plan in 2005. There was nothing in the minutes. Prior to that, there were informal
They
discussions.
received their variances in 2002 from the zoning board. I gave this as document.
There was, the Biosphere did not have a site plan before the planning
I'm not talking
board.
about site plan approvals. I'm talking about.
Well, I am.
Okay, so we're talking about two different things.
Well, let's talk about the same thing, all right?
No, what,
Okay, that's enough. What's your response? Do you have any other
agree.
response?
Well-
We now have established that everyone knew,
No,
or should have known, that the yellow zone was changed to PI in 2002. The minutes are all over the place, but it's clear everyone knew it was a PI zone. So now,
First of all,
What else you want to
to
respond?
clarify the record, Mr. Chairman.
and if you didn't know, you
the-
should have known.
Well, how could the zoning board know they weren't even part of the zone change?
We're not talking
We're
about.
not talking about the zoning board.
Why aren't we talking about the zoning board? You're the one that approved
Mr.
biosphere.
Levine, I'm not gonna argue with you. All your documents were planning board and CDRC, and that's what we were talking about. You wanna talk about the zoning board now? What do you wanna talk about?
Now, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, you just made a statement. All of my documents
Well, most of
were
it.
I beg your pardon.
I said most of them.
I understand that, but to refresh your memory, zoning board of appeals granted the following variances on May 9th, 2002. For biosphere, LO zone. Statements, whereas the proposed use is a permitted use in the zone, that the property is currently non-conforming because it's a residential use in the LO zone. I mean, these are all documents, this is zoning board. I mean, you can throw it planning board, you can throw it zoning board. Look, Mr. Chairman, I remember what happened at the time. There were some screw-ups, okay? These documents didn't just go, and I'm not gonna get into it. There were some major screw-ups. Anybody looking through our files, go figure it out for
All right.
themselves,
Got it.
okay?
What else?
But the zoning board
What else?
approved this. I'd just like to say, because again, after I said everything, it comes up again that the use before 2002 was for an office building. I submitted 7 documents from Rockland County Planning, from the Ambulance Corps, from CDRC, all showing that it's landscapers' equipment. How many times do we have to go through this? And every time I finish, it comes back, no, it was just an office building. No, it wasn't. The zoning board knew it wasn't, the planning board knew it wasn't. It was a landscape use. And I keep hearing it called, well, what's a full landscape use? You wanna know something? Got me. We defined it now. It's in our code. Landscapers are now permitted in the LO zone and the PI zone
Under conditions.
as a conditional use.
Under conditions that are stated in that.
As a conditional use.
Under.
Yes, there are conditions, of course, there are conditions
Fine.
for the use.
You made your point over and over again, Mr. Lee.
No, this is a new point.
What is it?
I just want to bring up one other thing before I get to that. You just stated, within 5 minutes ago, that I believe this gentleman, that the landscaper use is a permitted use in the PI zone. I do agree with you, but yet you're challenging me when I say it, and you're challenging me when I say it in the LO zone. You're saying when? When did this happen? Okay, same thing. I'm gonna go back. I do agree with you, because we interpreted our laws back in 2000 that it was a permitted use. Did we specifically state the use? Look up your own minutes that don't exist. Okay, and I do want to draw to a conclusion. You're trying to determine if a landscaper use is permitted on Mr. Slackman's property.
No, I'm trying to determine whether landscaping use is permitted in LO zone.
In an LO zone,
Right.
okay. But the application was for Mr. Slackman's property.
Mr. Levine.
Okay, I'll go for the LO zone. Mr. Chairman, I believe December 2009, a law was written by this village. It included the PI zone and the LO zone.
Correct.
So why are we driving ourselves crazy? It's easy. Go to the code book. The landscaping use is permitted in the LO zone and the PI zone.
We're where it is now. Go ahead.
I rest my case.
Thank you. Mr. Lippert?
Okay, I'm not gonna repeat my argument about the effect of the 2009 amendment. I made an argument about that before, I'm not gonna repeat it. I only want to say one more thing. You got a letter from Rockland County, October 13th, 2011, in connection with our application. And in that, Rockland County Department of Planning says, "We note that the proposed use does not appear to be one of the permitted uses in the laboratory LO zone, and that this landscaping contracting storage yard use is more of a general, commercial, or industrial use than those currently allowed in the village's LO zone." I didn't say that. This is an independent body that looked at your ordinance and said, you look at your ordinance, and that's what you have to conclude. Now, you have, this letter must be part of the record, because it was addressed to the zoning board of appeals, and it's dated October 13th, 2011.
Sorry. We
So,
have it.
yeah, okay, so I just want to make sure you have it. I want you to remember that.
What's
That's
the date of it?
October 13th, 2011. And when Rockland County looked at your ordinance, they said, "Yeah, landscaping is not permitted."
Oh, yeah, I remember this.
So, thank you.
Okay. All right. Uh, I'd like a motion, if I can have it, to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
We have a second, all in favor? Contrary minded? Public hearing is closed. There's been a lot of documentation, a lot of testimony. I need to, and I think other board members need to continue to review the record, and we will hopefully make a decision at the next meeting, which is January. Well, so I'd like a motion to adjourn. I want to adjourn the record.
Yeah.
We're gonna reserve the decision, and most likely give the decision, most likely, on January 12th. Actually, I have a problem with that. Now, I'm flying back. I'm in the air most of the last part of that day. I just don't want to miss the meeting. Do you have any other matters coming up? No? So this is the only matter, and all we have to do is get a decision. So, rather than take a chance that I can miss that meeting, I'm free the whole next week. It's the 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th. It's just, I believe, a cross-country flight. Although I have a conflict in several meetings. Depends on which meeting I'm attending. Either coming back from an island somewhere to meet it, or some other state. I want to change it.
How about the 17th?
What day?
17th Tuesday.
17th Tuesday.
Everybody, Kathleen?
Mm-hmm.
Dominic, you're going. Okay, that's a motion to adjourn the meeting of the zoning board of appeals for the village of Chestnut Ridge until January 17th. What? 2011.
Well,
No, I don't think we have. Let's approve it next meeting. Even though contrary to my instructions to get those approved soon. Let's approve it next meeting. I have a motion to adjourn the meeting of the zoning board of appeals, Village of Chestnut, Rio to January 17th.
Motion to adjourn.
Stewart, you want to second that?
Absolutely. I second.
Any discussion? All in favor? We're adjourned.
Yeah, thank you. Make a motion. You just said it.
Yeah, you sound like De Niro.
Hey. You talking to me? You talking to me? This is how you
Us. I was asked, outside.
I just found out you're working for the village. I should have went to meet you.
It's right there by the corner across from CVS.
I was horrible. I didn't know who you are.
Um,
What?